Is that fan on, honey? Would you mind? Just we're gonna record. Thank you.
All right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome to the T Simple Podcast. We focus on providing simple solutions in the classroom. I got my brother Beau McCoy. Beau is a visionary, an entrepreneur. He is someone who is not only trying to provide education for the youth, but he wants to provide the lens that they see themselves. So he wants you to see Black educators on the screen, right? He wants you to see Black educators, doing STEM. Because we know Black people are not a monolith, and so this brother is really trying to make that concept true through technology. Beau is someone I met, through Clubhouse. He is someone who is you're all about family. Everyone I know, you know. You know what I'm saying? You're really big on connecting people and creating a network, because in the end, we're all gonna need each other when we really get to that point. And so we want to make sure that we're connected. So I'm so happy I got my brother, Beau McCoy, Soul Academy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to know you these last few weeks, and I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you for having me on the Teach Simple podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And then Soul Academy. So just talk about that name. Like, what did the name come from?
Absolutely. So I've been working with teachers for like the last 6 years, right? My background is in technology and software, and overwhelmingly they tell me we want things that are easy. Teachers do 8 jobs, 16, 32 jobs in one, and they call it teaching, right? And they don't have time to learn a new technology because they've got to go to professional development all the time to learn something that the district is putting in their lap and doesn't really necessarily add that much value. So the number one objective that I was told, make it easy. Please give us something that's really easy. So we started with this concept of simplicity. The idea of technology is to make our lives more efficient so that we can make more out of the time that we have. But unfortunately, technology usually just slows us down. So that's why we started with the S for simple. And so we had simple, and what fosters growth? But the sun. Then that's what the word soul is Spanish for sun. So SOL, simple online learning, right? We make it really easy so that you can grow and provide that amazing service that you do in education.
Wow. Love it, man. Absolutely. And the simplicity, that's something that the podcast we really try to focus on is, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Because as my brother Gianni, he's a teacher in DC, he says the answer is literally as simple as your nose and right in your face, and a lot of our problems can be like that. Or if we just think in that mindset, we can, solve a lot of our issues that are present.
Absolutely.
Man. So, where are you from? Like, where are you from? Like, growing up, and like, what were some passions you had?
Absolutely. So I grew up in a town called Freeport, New York, which is the home of the rap group Public Enemy, right? So if you know about Chuck D and Flavor Flav, that's where I'm from. Now, this town was really amazing. I didn't realize it till I was later in life, but it was very integrated, both racially and economically, right? So there was a large Black population, a large Hispanic population, also a large white population. And it was very diversified from high, medium, and low socioeconomic backgrounds. So all I saw was equality, right? Everyone went to the same school. They worked in the same places. They shopped in the same places. So I thought that was normal, right?
Yeah.
And that was my view of the world. Like, people got along and it didn't matter what you looked like. You could be whoever you wanted to be. So I didn't really learn about inequality and achievement gaps and these sorts of things until much later in life. And that really shaped my background because I've seen it work, right? I've seen where regardless of what the skin color you are, you could get the 5 on the AP exams just like anyone else. So the concept of inequality or like disadvantagement, I don't believe in that. Like, I fundamentally don't believe it's like we're just a product of our environment at the end of the day. So if you put any 2 people in the same environment, the outcome is generally going to be about the same, right? So we just got to fix the environment. And that's like my lens and my view on the world.
And how does equity fit into that for you?
Yeah, so equity, like I saw this study back in 2016 about how when they brought the internet to the inner city Kansas City schools, all of a sudden the achievement gaps were eliminated. Why is that? Because the poorer schools had worse books Really, they just didn't have the same quality materials. And when the internet came in and they could learn the same math lesson as the more economically advantaged areas, all of a sudden they were performing just as well on the test scores. So I don't believe that, just because of your background doesn't mean you can't achieve something. You just need access to the same resources and the same opportunity. And that's what equity is. It's saying that every child, no matter what their background is, no matter what their parents do, have access to the same quality of education, the same resources, the same potential, and see visions of success that look like them. That's what equity means. It means that you can see somebody who looks like you, who's doing exactly what you want to do, regardless of what you look like. And you could see the path to becoming that in your own life.
And then adding to that is like, giving people what they need, right? Because everyone doesn't need the same thing. And so equity also allows us to, provide, exactly what this demographic might need, whether if it's more computers, whether if it's more parapros, whether it's more reading or math interventionists compared to another one, just so we can even the playing field as much as possible.
Absolutely. That's the concept of individuality, right? And that's really what it's all about. It's meeting the student's needs, no matter what those needs are, that's right for that student as the unique, special human being that they are, right? Which is, yes, it's in the classroom, but it's also them as their emotions and their mentality and their physical health, right? Everything that goes along with them. We have to meet all of those needs. That's what equity means to me.
So for you, so growing up in that bubble, you know, where did the bubble burst for you? Where did you realize that it wasn't the same as what's the name of the space you're from in New York? You said
Freeport, New York. Yeah.
Freeport, New York.
I could tell you it was September, let's say 10th, 1998. And this is when I matriculated to Dartmouth College, which is an Ivy League school. And I went in there thinking that, this is an elite university and everyone's going to be amazing here. And well, my dream was shattered pretty quick, because you learn that most people who get into Ivy League schools aren't there on academic merit. They're there because they play a sport, they're a legacy, their parents are very rich, something like that. And they just get basically put on this path of tremendous amounts of opportunity. So that was number one. And then number two, the underrepresentation of pretty much all races that are not white. It was jarring and shocking. Like I couldn't believe it. I mean, you see it on paper and you see the statistics that only 8% of the students are Black and only 2% are Hispanic. But when you see it, it's a different concept. I was not used to anything like that. So here I am at the seat of privilege. And then the vast majority of people didn't really earn their way there. And then the vast majority of people there did not look anything like me. So that was when I was confronted with reality in terms of inequity.
What type of double consciousness do you need to have to survive in that environment?
For me, it was always, I kind of just was always taught that, you do your best and that's all that matters, right? And, I'm on my own individual journey and I could see things going on outside, but I didn't really internalize that as much. So, it's hard because everyone was put into their own little groups, right? And like the people who play tennis hang out with these people, and there's like an African American group, they only hang out with them, and it's like really isolated. And I was never really down with any of that. I change, like depending on what I feel like that day, I'm going to be a different person and I can get along with pretty much everyone. But I think that's the approach. I didn't allow myself to be pigeonholed into one stereotype, right? And went out and just did my thing. And also I was on a mission, right? I was there for a reason. My reason of being was to learn as much as I possibly could, make as many great connections as I could so I can get my career going. Right. So I think having a longer term value, like a longer term goal to tie myself to, was kind of removed me from any of the short term pain that I think I might have suffered.
Wow. That takes a lot of wisdom. I'm curious to know who taught you that.
Yeah, so my grandfather, he was an African American. He grew up in Harlem in the 20s and 30s. He was really into jazz. He loved playing music. And he taught me, what it was like to live in segregation and to come up in New York City. And, he wanted to get a promote. He worked for the Transit Authority in New York City. He wasn't able to get it because of the color of his skin. And he taught me that at a young age. It's like, you know what, no matter how people treat you, you always treat them with respect. No matter what somebody says or does to you, you always do your best, right? Because you can only control your behavior. And I learned that at a very young age. Believe in yourself and do the best that you can. The outside world, it is what it is. You really can't control what anything that happens or what anyone does other than your own behavior and your own mentality. I learned that at a young age, and so I just rode with it.
We talk about testing, right? Just education and the pursuit of it. We connect, achievement to greatness. We connect degrees to, to prestige, and status, right? And it kind of creates this dynamic in education where the pursuit of education isn't for the education, where it's mainly pursuit of the status. That makes any sense. And we kind of lose that, right? And so going back to what your elder taught you, that's great education, right? Because it allowed you to survive in Dartmouth. Where do you think, and I guess for a teacher tip, what would you say to teachers who struggle with educating kids versus just schooling them?
I think you got to think about what is the purpose of that student being in the classroom. If it's just to fill their head with information, they can go on YouTube and get way more, right? So I don't think you can approach it from that lens anymore. Like, these kids at 4 years old can learn more than you can teach them in way less time. That's just the reality of the situation. But what I think the real value that you can get is to open up that door to them finding the belief in themselves, right? For them to understand who they are, what drives them, what motivates them, and then kind of, push them on that path of self-discovery and just learning to love learning. In my 4th grade class, I had this amazing teacher, Miss Wills, and I was not into school before her class, but she sat down and she said, okay, let's understand who you are. We did this little project where it's called All About Me, and you answer these questions and talk about who you are now and who you want to become. That's where I learned that, wow, I like to learn about myself and I like to learn about other things. And that set me up for the rest of my academic journey, right? I could point to that moment in the fall of 1989 in her class when I learned to love learning. And from that moment on, it's followed me through my high school, through college, through working in tech, and now starting my own company. That's self-belief and self-discovery, but you need someone to support you and make you feel like it's okay and ask the right question and point you on the right path and pick you up when you stumble and keep you motivated when you lose that internal motivation. That's what I think all teachers can do that will never, ever be replaced by any computer or by YouTube or something like that, is instilling that belief in a young learner that will last them the rest of their life.
And the beauty in what you're doing with Soul Academy is them taking that same magic and putting it in a video,
Exactly.
which is different from just making videos. You understand what I mean? Wow. So that's cool. That was a great tip. And then it also sounded like you were talking about, it sounded like you had some really good teachers as well. So maybe what's a great childhood memory, maybe in education that you can think about, or just something that maybe it wasn't a good, maybe it was worse. I don't know. I mean, a bad childhood memory. What could you share towards that?
Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but this concept of, I'll just call it segregating students, quite honestly, and having them go to separate classes based on their ability, was really messed up, because I was in a lot of the advanced classes. And while my town was very integrated, most of the Black people lived on the north side and most of the white people lived on the south side. So I was in these advanced math classes, right, and advanced reading classes, and there were very few Black students in those classes, but that's who I lived with. right? They were all in my neighborhood. So I was like, I didn't understand why my friends from the neighborhood went to my school, but they weren't in my classes. So it created this weird dichotomy. And that's not how the real world is, right? You have to get along with everyone, no matter what their background is, or, you know, how intelligent they're supposed to be. Like, you've got to learn to get along with everyone. So I think it's really bad to isolate students and separate them in that way. Again, because it's not about pumping knowledge into their minds. It's about teaching them how to be a better human, you know, how to function in our society, how to believe in themselves. And so I'm really not into like grades. Yeah, I'm not into assessments. I'm not into anything that separates people, because you should be going there to learn how to navigate through the web of humanity and society. So yeah, I thought it was great. Like, my impression of it was great, but then when I look back and like as an adult and realize what was going on, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that concept.
And we actually did a run on our AP and IB um, test discriminatory. And we concluded that IB wasn't really as discriminatory, but we were just saying that tracking, just that, you need to take a test in order to do this. Like, that tracking system is actually rooted in segregation, because, you have to, if you have the class, if you have the money, then you can, the people who to talk to create that system where your kid or child, is in that. And there are perks to it, right? But at the same time, is that helping everybody? Is that helping the majority? Is that helping the kids who aren't getting it? Or are we just perpetuating the system? Wow. So okay, cool. So then so where did it ever feel like, in your journey, towards just creating, equal opportunity in education, and just learning about that. Like, what were some of the shortfalls for you? What were some of just like the moments where you just was like, man, this is too much. I don't know if this is worth doing, because you are doing something that's innovative and different, and a lot of people aren't doing it. So yeah.
Yeah. So eventually, as an adult, I learned that we are pretty much all product of our environment, right? Depending on the circumstance that we're put in. Like, if we get into that AP class, it's a great indicator of the success that we're going to have later in life. And quite honestly, I think that's BS. Like, it shouldn't matter what the opportunity has. It should be the value and the hard work that you put in. Like, it should be merit based. And that's why I believe so much in individualized learning, right? Take the student out of the classroom and build the classroom around the student instead. Put every student on their own academic journey. When I was at Dartmouth, I told you that it was a lot of underrepresentation of Black and brown students, but also I was a computer science major, and there was one female computer science major, right? Out of, I don't know how many there were, 70 or 80. That's
Yeah.
crazy to me. It doesn't make any sense. It should be 50-50, right?
Yeah.
And then I went on to work in tech companies. And again, there was like very few females in the companies and very few Black and brown people. It was ridiculous, and I knew that they're just as smart and just as capable, because in my primary and secondary education, I saw them and they did well, but they just weren't. And that's just because of the way that society is. So we got to scrap that paradigm, right? We've got to start giving the students the resources that they need so they can go and do the best that they can, regardless of what the school or the class or the teacher, whatever circumstance that they find themselves in, they're on their own academic journey and they can maximize it. That's what they get everywhere else. That's what they get on TikTok. That's why they love it so much. They love that freedom to be creative and express themselves, right? And social media. So that's really what I'm here to do. I'm here to help education meet the needs of each individual student.
What were some of those companies that you worked at? And then maybe like talk about just maybe like a story of seeing those disparities. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first, I don't want to name them. So the first one that I worked at was a startup in San Diego that did very, very well. And I was a software developer. I was the only Black one. I was the only female one. Sorry, there were no female ones in the company, and it did really well. And the people there, they made a lot of money. I later went on to work with a company called Go Guardian, where I was the head of sales for a number of years. And we were big partners with Microsoft and Google and these sorts of things. And I would go and I'd see the people who work there. And again, there's just very few minorities and very few females that work in these positions. So it's just like every year, everywhere I looked, every door I opened, I saw the same things. And, it's just a reflection of the society that we live in today. And it's not a reflection of people's capability or their potential or their hard work or their effort. It's just a reflection of the circumstance that they're in.
And what does that ultimately produce when we keep those constructs at bay?
Well, what it does is, it's like if you're building a campfire and you get a small spark, right? You've got to fan it and you got to put some kindling in there and you got to get it going. Or you could stamp it out and throw water on it and it's going to go away. So young people, they have that spark, right? And they have that belief. And if you fan it and you put some more paper on it, it's going to grow and it's going to get bigger. But I think a lot of the system stamps on it, and it throws water on it. And it does its best to quash whatever, burning desire that young people have. And so without that, you're just going to fall into whatever's handed to you, right? You're not going to push through whatever barriers because you don't believe in yourself. And so what you get is wage gaps. And, look at what's happening we love talking about the vaccine and how there's, much less use vaccine amongst the Black and Hispanic population. So you just exacerbate all the problems because you're only providing opportunities to a select few in society, and everyone should be afforded that same opportunity.
I love that analogy, man. I love that analogy because that room I was talking to you about regarding just the AP and IB, there were some people that were kind of, saying that tracking is okay because you don't want to put kids in the wrong spot and they end up, believing that they're in a class that they don't deserve to be in. And I told a story about how I was in an IB class and I pretty much was told to leave because I just wasn't, academically there. But I remember the first thing he told me when he realized that I wasn't academically there, he said, "I don't see you getting anything higher than a D." This guy went to UVA. I think he eventually got fired because too many people failed this class. But that motivated me to push, and really like get in the class. But then I wonder if that was him trying, because for me, like, me being from New Orleans, like you could tell me I can't do nothing. I'm gonna do it 3 times harder. You know what I'm saying? And so I wonder if him telling me that was him stamping on it versus like him waving it. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't believe in negative reinforcements and this concept of doing things from a point of anger and I have a chip on my shoulder. I believe that you should fan it, and I think you shouldn't play games. You just be clear, be like, you know what, Calvin, based on what I'm seeing, it looks like you're going to get a D, but how can you get that A? Right, and dangle the carrot for them. So it was I believe it was probably his method of motivating you, but I never try to tear down. I always try to build up. So I would ask him to think about how he could build you up in his communication and say, you know what, this is going to be a challenge for you, but I'm going to do everything that I can to help you get that A, because if you truly believe in yourself, then you will. Because yeah, maybe the person who you were that day was only going to get a D, but you could wake up the very next day and be a completely different person, which is what you told me you did. And I'm sure you did better than that. Right. So, and that's the belief that we need to instill. You're one of a very select few people who, when they hear something negative, can turn that into a positive. Overwhelmingly, when people hear negative stuff, they internalize it, especially children, and they believe it about them to be true. It's not true. It's someone else's opinion. What matters is your opinion of yourself. So believe that you can, and then you will, as you demonstrated. So I applaud you for that.
Let's talk about that professor, the law professor. You know, I'm talking about the one who said that her Black students. Do you remember that story?
No.
Oh man! So pretty much, she was having a conversation to her colleagues, and it was being recorded. And she was saying, "I hate to say this, but a lot of my kids who fail are Black, or the Blacks." And she just was saying how she feels bad for them, and just really kind of like just we'll say she wasn't stamping on their dreams, but kind of like making a generalization, you know, over a race and attaching intellect to that, you know, which is a bad thing. And I guess you didn't see it, so I don't. I guess I just won't go.
No, we could talk about that. I mean, it comes down to the situational nature of things, right? If you just say, you know, black people are not going to do well in my class, then you're creating that situation for them, right?
Yeah,
So how did we get here? Well, are these black students coming in less prepared because of the schooling that they've got before they got to your class? Maybe, maybe not. What does the data show? Well, if we know that they're coming in less prepared, what tools do they need in order to do well in my class? And can I provide those tools for them before they even show up, the day number one, so that they are ready to do the best that they can in this class? Because it's not a matter of their ability, it's a matter of the circumstance that they're faced in. And so to only look at the results and say, you know, oh, these students can't do well, that's the exact opposite of, you know, the mentality that we should be approaching as a teacher. We should be saying, okay, what got us here? Why am I having these issues? And how can I resolve them? Because I guarantee if she took the time to understand her black students and why they were struggling and pointed the finger at herself instead of pointing it at her students, she would have resolved whatever issues were holding them back in her class. It's probably related to her teaching, and all her black students would be excelling. I guarantee it, because she would have addressed the sickness and not the symptoms, right? Look at the inputs to change the outputs. Don't look at the outputs and try to change the outputs. Look at the inputs.
brother Beau McCoy up on in the house, man, dropping the gems, man. Absolutely. Yeah, and I like what you're saying. You don't believe in like using like negative reinforcement to motivate you. There are a lot of teachers, a lot of professors who have power that do that. You know, just me being in physics, you know, I experienced that a lot. Just seeing how they use like like you said, they try to bully you as a way to teach you tough skin to get through this system. You know what I'm saying? Like you heard stories of like professors pushing people's dissertations on and on just to, you know, prove a point, or, you know, kind of like, you know, quote unquote teach, but you're saying like that is so counterproductive, because only a few make it out of that, where you can get a large majority that actually makes it if you do exactly what you said. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can just reframe it, right? You can just say it in another way. Say, you know what? This is a great dissertation, but I know you and I know that you can do better. How can we do better? I know that you think this is the best job that you have, that you've done, but the experience that I have with you in this past year together has shown me that you can reach deeper, like you can accomplish more. And I'm challenging you to do so, right? Versus saying, this is not good enough. Get it out of here, right? It's just reframing. It's the same exact argument, just reframed in a positive structure. One that's going to shine light on the person's belief in themselves versus, you know, putting a shadow on the belief of themselves, making them feel like they're not good enough. I don't believe in that. I fundamentally disagree with that as a concept.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you just really proving your philosophy in education. I definitely am convinced. So what's Soul Academy, man? What's that?
Well, it's exactly what we're talking about. So it's simple online learning. And for the listeners out there, it's SOLCADEMY.com or at Soul Academy on all social platforms. And what it is a great way for you to meet your students where they are with the information that you want them to have. All students do is watch videos. They're spending between 9 to 15 hours, waking hours every single day watching videos. A great way to front load information for them is to put key concepts into short videos for them to watch before you meet with them, so that they have questions, so that they're excited about what you're going to talk about, so that you can connect what you're going to talk about in your class to other material. And most importantly, if they have a challenge, that you can address it before they're no longer with you, right? So they learn the information first, and then they come to your class with that challenge, which is really what I believe is the future of education. If you ask any child to learn something, they're not going to say, let me go sit down for a class and listen to a lecture for 45 minutes. They're going to go on YouTube and they're going to figure it out. This is already happening in our society, and Soul Academy is just a way to bridge what's happening in education to everything else that's happening in a young person's life today, where it's all about them. They're in control, they drive, they have options, they have selection, and they can go like make their own journey. And that is what Soul Academy is here to do. Connect teachers and the amazing work that they do every single day to the behavior that students are doing in their normal lives.
And what is the future of education with the paradigm that you are, promoting with Soul Academy?
There's a lot more complete information. So instead of a teacher having to guess what a student's interests are, or what their family situation is, or what their past performance might have been, we would love to actually show you that data for every single one of your students. And if you're a school leader, we would like to show you that data for all groups of students so that you can make sure that you allocate the right resources. Teachers are asked to do everything on their own. It's time that we support them with the data that they need and the resources that they need to make great decisions. So you as a teacher will have a huge library of content, some of which you've created, some of which your colleagues have created, so that will match the individual taste of every single one of your scholars at the exact level that they're at. And you can then navigate and address the human questions that come up and treat each of them individually. That's what it's all about for us at the end of the day. Individualized learning and creating a place for teachers to creatively express themselves. Yeah. So many teachers are frustrated because they're put into a box and said, you can only teach this, this, and this because we're teaching to this standard. I can't change that, but what I can do is create a space for you to teach physics the way that you want to teach physics, and teach about the concepts and the areas that interest you and speak to you. Because if you're doing what you truly believe is awesome, it's going to make you a great teacher, right? You're going to shed that, weight that they cast on you and put you in this, like format, say you can only do this. All of a sudden you're free to express yourself. You're gonna be the best teacher you've ever been. And guess what? Students are gonna love you for it. When they see you really being yourself and like stepping into the amazing education potential that you have as a teacher, students around the world are gonna love that and say, I need to learn physics from Mr. Nellum. That's what the future of education looks like. It's hyper-personalized, it's data-driven, and it's got creative expression, freedom for creative expression.
Beau McCoy, brother man, I appreciate you so much for coming on the podcast. What are some subjects that you have on Soul Academy? Maybe talk about some of the people you work with, and then just like, what's the vision, in the next couple months?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're in the throes of a mental health crisis around the United States and around the world right now. So we're leaning in very heavily into content for social and emotional learning, as well as mental and behavioral health. We think that there's a infinite need for that. So if you have any experience in those areas, please start creating videos and put them onto the site. The other thing that we're really going hard after is real life skills. We spoke with many high school students and they want to learn, how do I get a job? How do I balance my checkbook? How do I invest, personal finance and all these sorts of things. So that is the other area that we're really making a career and technical education, real life learning. This is the kind of content that you're going to find on Soul Academy. And the future is being responsive to the students, right? We're going to constantly be polling students and saying, what do you want to learn? And we're going to get that content to them immediately, because that's the key to keeping them engaged, right? Continuing to feed that fire and allowing it to grow.
Absolutely. And that's the equity, right? Because we're asking them so we can, be intentional. So like you said, we're not just solving the wrong problems. Absolutely. And then where can they find you? And then what do you want people to get from the podcast?
Absolutely. So you can find us on soulcademy.com, SOLCADEMY.com, at Soul Academy on Clubhouse, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. What do I want you to get? You got into teaching for a reason, and you should be living and working and breathing into that reason every single waking day of your life,
Yeah,
because that's really why you're here. And Soul Academy is a place for you to find that again, to find that joy, that love, that passion. You know, when you heard the call that asked you to be a teacher and you answered it, this is your place to express that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bo, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you, brother, man. Thank you so much. Definitely going to be putting some new content on Soul Academy again. Can you give them the website one more time?
Soulcademy.com, SOLCADEMY.com. Simple online learning.
Absolutely. And please make an account, teachers. All you got to do is make an account, put your profile pic up there, and then you can start uploading your own individual content. And then you can get views and stuff, right?
Yeah, we got views and we've got reporting coming very soon. So you'll be able to see who watched your video and how many times and how much time they spent, where in the world they were, your students or people all over the world. So that's coming very soon.
How is this different from Khan Academy?
So you can think of us like YouTube meets Khan Academy, right? So what's great about YouTube is it's a space where anyone can go and upload videos. So you get a tremendous amount of choice. But what's bad about it is it's not organized like Khan Academy is broken out just like your curriculum. So that's where we live in between the two, where we have a massive pool of creators. We're going to have millions of teachers uploading videos, but it's all neatly organized. So you can find ninth grade physics, thermodynamics, right? You can find exactly what you're looking for very easily, like on Khan Academy. So it's an open platform.
Absolutely. Love it. I love it. Love the diversity. I'm looking forward to the future. And I definitely want to be a part of that. Thank you so much, Bo, for coming on the Teach Simple podcast. Thank you so much for just promoting and just pushing your platform to allow teachers like me and other people to just really, like you said, if you love what you're teaching, the kids are going to love it. And so really, thank you so much for doing that for us. We appreciate you.
It's my biggest joy, and I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on here, and thank you for anyone who hears this or sees this. We appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.